Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Live at the Waterhole. My name is Taylor McCurdy, and I'll be the voice you'll be hearing for the next couple of days. I'm off to a great start. Not the next couple of days, the next couple of hours. Goodness gracious, it's obviously Saturday. Everyone, I've been grafting hard this morning, and this is, in fact, the first time that I've sat down today, which I suppose is not a bad thing. But that also means that I have no idea what I'm talking about. But isn't that the usual with me? But if this is your first time watching Live at the Waterhole, yep, it's in the name. This is happening right now. And we are currently in South Africa at a place called Nkoro, which is situated in, if not the best place in Africa for game viewing, called the Sabi Sand Game Reserve. And we're just watching a couple of giraffe. You can see one on the left is munching away, and the one on the right-hand side looks like it's actually having a bit of a scratch. Now, if you would like to ask me questions, I'd love to hear from all of you. All you have to do is you can comment away on the YouTube chat. That's probably the easiest. Otherwise, you're also welcome to use X. If you don't know what X is, it was called Twitter. Just remember that you use the hashtag WildEarth at the end. Otherwise, I'm never going to know that you're talking to me. It's looking a little bit on the windy side. The grass is moving around quite too far away from, well, as the crow flies from this particular waterhole camera. I'm sitting in Footscray, which is the safari capital of South Africa. And there's not even a breath of wind outside. I'm looking to see if any of the trees and the leaves are blowing in the wind, but nothing. So it's amazing just how weather is so localized. I know that there's a bit of a cold front around the Western Cape, but I don't think that it's going to be affecting us too much. In fact, it's getting quite cold, and the giraffe is standing in the shade for a reason. There we go, Catherine. You said, woo, my dream team is on today. So Jordan is directing, for those of you that are wondering. And then Joan Mello, you said, good cat today. Let's hope so. I don't know. Did you see any big cats this morning on the sunrise safari? I'm not sure. I didn't watch. And no, apparently no cats. It was a quiet morning. Well, it better not be like that for this waterhole show, because I've been looking forward to this, hoping to catch some action. For the most part, we just are able to watch animals do their thing without them even knowing that we're there, which I think is pretty amazing. This is the truest way to watch wildlife without disturbing them through cameras. But it's occasionally, it doesn't happen all the time, although social media likes to, gives this false perception that when you go on a safari or you watch wildlife, the craziest of things happens, it just every second, but that's obviously not the case. There's a whole lot of nothing happening if you only deem sightings exciting when, your adrenaline is through the roof, or there's wild dogs bursting onto the scene, or a leopard scaling a tree. However, I also quite enjoy just sitting and watching and listening. But for the most part, animals don't make too much noise unless you're a bird or an insect of some kind. Then you typically like to chat, but the other animals, they're fairly quiet. Mindy, you've said, it's always a pleasure to hear my voice. It's sounding a bit on the husky side. Obviously everyone's quite sick at the moment. I was really sick in March, so I was hoping that I'm done for the year now. But my allergies have gone through the roof, but I suppose that's self-inflicted, because that's what you get for not taking antihistamines, right? And I have to live off of them. So please excuse that. And then Mercedes, you said, hello, Taylor. You said, it's nice to meet me. It's nice to meet you too. And then, of course, the question that I was waiting for from Susie09, you said, how has Tucker been? Tucker, he's here, but I was trying to coax him come and sit next to me, and he actually wants to go outside and swim, which he's more than welcome to do, but then he stands on the other side of the door and sulks. So I've just locked him in my room with me, but he's good. He's dirty. He's due for a bath after the show, because yesterday he went from being sort of tawny color of a lion to chocolate brown from all the mud that he'd been playing in. So not so great. If you're wondering who Tucker is, Tucker's my dog. Sorry, forget that they're quite often new people, but Tucker's always the star of the show. There you go, one of the giraffe just moving off now. There might be quite a few more that are lurking around. And just like most animals, being in the shade is, if not the easiest way, and the less energy. No, what am I trying to say? Why does my brain do this? It's the most energy efficient way to of course keep yourself cool. We look at elephants, which I'm sure we'll see in a little bit, and we'll talk about how they keep themselves cool. But there's a lot of movement required. But for giraffes, is perfect. You can hear a little bit of chitter chatter from the birds too. They'll also be sitting in the shade of the trees. There you go. You can hear it sounds like a virtual starling, that sort of raspy noise. Plenty of them around. And Mark, you've asked if I can tell what gender these giraffe are. It can always be a bit on the tricky side. For those of you that are watching for the first time, or maybe you've always wondered how can you stay giraffe, it takes a little bit of practice, but there are really just two ways that we typically use. There are a couple of other subtle signs, but that can take a bit longer and a bit more practice to be able to kind of get that. So with a giraffe, we look at those protrusions on the top of their heads. They kind of look like horns, but we don't refer to them as horns. We call them ossicones, as it's just it's basically just bone that's really fused to the top of their skull, but there's no keratin hard coating that we typically see on horns. It's just skin. And then they've got lovely long tufts of hair. When they've got those lovely long tufts of hair on the top of the ossicones, for the most part, it's a female. If that hair is kind of removed, it almost looks like you can see like a bald spot on top of the ossicones. That would typically make it a male. But I have also seen males with ossicones before, and it also depends on their age. So the other thing that you can do is, of course, when the giraffe is walking towards you or it turns side on, you just look straight underneath the belly, and if you can see a little bump on the belly, you'll basically be looking at it's not the belly button, it's the sheath of the penis. That, however, is a female giraffe by the looks of it, but there will most likely be a mixed group here, males, females, as they are relatively social. We'll see if this other one comes out. And then, of course, if you want to get a little bit more technical, often the thickness of those ossicones with males is a lot broader, whereas the females tend to be a lot more slender. And the older that a giraffe bull gets, so the males, these carnations all over their face. Their face doesn't look just beautiful and smooth. It looks like it's got big lumps and bumps on it. So that happens as well. Okay, they're just moving to a new area, maybe to do a bit of feeding. For the most part, they were just ruminating their food, so regurgitating it, the partially digested vegetation, re-chewing it, and then swallowing. And now they're going to get ready to start feeding again. Oh, look at this one. This is actually quite cool. See the giraffe having a scratch on what I thought looked like a very prickly tree. The giraffe have got particularly tough skin. Not that stops the parasites like ticks from biting them. And because they don't have arms and legs like us, well, this is the next best thing. You can see animals using solid trunks of trees. You see them using trees that are dead and have fallen over to kind of scratch underneath their belly. And sometimes what you'll see with giraffes, they'll push small trees like this over and try and get those thin branches to sort of scratch in between their front legs. Think of like your armpit, for an example. It's probably the easiest way to describe it. All those folds, is a perfect place for parasites. And the trunk of a tree is not going to help get rid of that, but these smaller branches will definitely do so. It's all about adapting and surviving, right? Oh, very itchy. Now, Tully, you've said, do giraffes ever interfere with bird nests? That's an interesting question. And the reason why I say that's an interesting question is I have a funny story to tell you before I get into that. When I was working in Zambia in the Lower Zambezi National Park, there's a bird called a white-browed sparrow weaver, and they make very interesting nests. It almost looks like somebody's taken a handful of straw and then just stuck it in a dead tree, right? Or just a tree in general. But on the dead ones, it obviously stands out like a sore thumb. And I had some guests once, and it's so new for people coming on a safari for the first time. Firstly, the smells are different. There's no tarred roads for them, or power lines. There's so much open space and wildlife. There's no hum from the vehicles. There's no sirens going from police vans and ambulances. It's a very different experience, and I think your senses are overwhelmed. And sometimes, we get these interesting questions, and we have a chuckle about them afterwards. And they said to me, Taylor, God, we've just left camp. They said, Taylor, do you guys put these like tufts of grass in the trees for the giraffe? And I said, no. I was like, it's actually a bird. And then I explained the whole situation. And unfortunately, in the Lower Zambezi National Park, there are no giraffe. They've never occurred there. So I had quite a chuckle at that. But Tully, I can't say that I've ever seen a giraffe interfering with a bird nest, but maybe some of the smaller bird nests on the trees, that'll make their nest like right inside the tree, potentially. I don't think they go out on purpose going, haha, today I'm going to bulldoze 12 dove nests or anything along those lines. So perhaps it happens, but not something that I'd imagine is a common occurrence. Yeah, Mindy, you've said life can be tough when you don't have hands. Right, exactly. That's why you've got to figure it all out and just use what's around you. So they might not use tools in the way in which we would use them, but by using that tree is a pretty clever strategy. Okay, I think what we're going to do, though, seeing as the giraffe are kind of moving on now, let's head over to Cat Eye Pan and see if the elephants are still around. Yay, they're still here. That's good news. I thought they might have moved off. We were going to come here earlier, but then the giraffe started scratching, which was quite interesting to see. So now we are in Olifants West Game Reserve. I am so close to this area. It would take me only 10 minutes to drive to this gate to get into this park. It's not very far at all. And it looks like it's just a couple of elephant bulls that we're here having a drink. There might have been a breeding herd a bit earlier. I suspect on a day like today there's going to be quite a bit of activity around the waterholes. There's very little food available already at this time of the year, which is madness. But I suppose that's what happens when we go into a drought period. And so earlier I was talking about how giraffes typically keep themselves cool. And for the most part, we just see them standing in the shade. But when we look at elephants, and I know a lot of you have heard this before, but I know there are probably some new people. Elephants have got a couple of different ways to keep themselves cool. For the most part, they have to come and drink, and they drink many liters of water. In fact, anywhere, depending on the age of the elephant, but of course it could be from 100 to 120 liters, maybe even a bit more. So that water will help cool themselves down, but then they also splash it on their bodies. So that directly cools the body temperature down. They'll also cover themselves with mud. All those wrinkles are really handy. The mud gets stuck in those crevices. It stays cooler and more moist for a bit longer. And then, of course, those big ears, which are moving all day long, flapping from side to side, as you can see. And if an elephant ever faces the other way and you're able to see on the underside of its ear, you'll notice how prominent the veins are. And I think the best way that it has ever been described to me as to how the elephant's ears work is think of a car's radiator. The fluid will help cool the entire vehicle down. So by moving that air, it cools the blood down from those exposed veins, and then that cool blood will then filter through the body and into the brain, and again help lower the body temperature. So not quite as energy efficient as just standing in the shade, but giraffe will do that too. And some animals just need to be, find ways to keep themselves cooler. Elephants are definitely susceptible to the heat because they don't sweat like you and I. So they need to figure out how on earth they can cool themselves down in a different way. Lenny, this is an interesting question. You said, is there ringworm there, and do animals or people get it? Yeah, of course. Ringworm can come about, gosh, in anywhere, and I've seen lots of animals with it. I'm just trying to think in terms of wildlife. I can't say that I've ever seen ringworm on wildlife, but then again, I'm watching them from a distance. I'm not inspecting closely. And normally when you see, might be where ringworm maybe would occur in an animal, obviously it can occur anywhere. Maybe it's just that something I haven't noticed. Maybe it just looks like a small lesion. But it can definitely be transferred to people. We obviously see cats and dogs with ringworm all the time, and especially children. They tend to spread it amongst one another. But of course, a little bit of some ointment on that, and then you're as right as rain. Okay, but I'm sad that these elephants didn't stay here for too long. I suppose I took forever to get here. So let's head over to Madikwe Game Reserve and check out the elephants there. There we go. This is one of my absolute favorite cameras. We are at Jamala, which is, like I said, in Madikwe Game Reserve. A spectacular place that's still high up on my bucket list of places to visit. I think the game viewing in this area this year is going to be spectacular. Again, these are two young bulls. They actually look younger than the ones we were just watching. Probably going to have a bit of a friendly tussle. You also hear all the birds chatting away in the background. And you often see blue wax bills. You often see the pied crows. There's a go-away bird calling as well. Bill Myrtle Beach, you said hello everybody, and you said you're so happy to hear my voice again. That's so strange because I think everybody feels the same way, right? Unless you're a voiceover artist, we probably all dread hearing ourselves talk. I know sometimes I'm a voice note sender when I use, like, I suppose everyone in South Africa, we just use WhatsApp to communicate. Text messaging for who. And when I sometimes play back my voice notes, I cringe. And I always cringe having to watch myself or listen to myself on any of the shows that I work on. Gosh, it's not something I particularly enjoy, but you'd think I'd be used to it now after all these years. Luna, you're wondering if elephants ever wade into super deep water, and if they did, could they drown? Luna, I know this sounds ridiculous, but elephants are spectacular swimmers. They are incredible. It almost looks like they tread water like water polo players. And then because they've got that long siphon attached to their faces, right, they just extend that trunk above the surface of the water, and they're able to breathe. So you could probably go and have a look on the internet and just YouTube. You can type in elephants crossing rivers. It's probably one of my favorite things in the whole world, and it's why I love Zambia so much, specifically for the Zambezi River, and watching the elephants swim out on a day to the islands to feed on the lovely lush green reeds and grasses that are for the most part untouched, and then swim back again to the mainland in the afternoon. And it is spectacular. It is tiny baby elephants that are being helped across by the adults to, of course, the bigger distance. But it's such a special sight to see, Luna. And I think once you watch it, you'll go, wow, okay, that's quite impressive. Always nice to hear the calls of the ring-necked doves. They're synonymous with the low-felt. Oh, I suppose there's so many bird calls that I could say that about. Yeah, we've got lots of questions. Thank you so much for sending them all in. And firstly, Jive Bunny, happy birthday. You said, it's your birthday today and you're so happy to be here with all of us. Well, we're happy that you're here. I wish I could sing happy birthday to you, but that might cause the viewership of the show to go down. If I'll do that. But happy birthday to you, and I hope it's the most magical day and you have all your family and friends with you. But of course, we are also here, and this is the greatest thing about Wild Earth is the online family that has just been created. And we can all be a part of one another's lives without even really knowing one another, which I love. I think that's very cool. Jai Pani, then you've also said that elephants crossing the Chobe River in Botswana was amazing. Absolutely. It is truly incredible to see that too. That's a great place to also see elephants in the water around the Delta area in Botswana. And then, of course, like I said, Zambia, from the Luangwa River to the Zambezi. I mean, there's so many, of course. But of course, you can see the Zambezi from the Zimbabwean side too. But can you imagine being on a boat at sunset when the elephants are crossing back? The silhouettes that you get, it's just a magical moment. It's just everything about it. I can't even describe it with words. It's a feeling. You have to just see it and experience it for yourself. And Catherine, you said that you've never seen elephants swim on all your safaris. We're going to have to change that. We really are going to have to change that. Okay, we're going to quickly go across to Aldonio now. There's a rather large elephant coming down to drink. Hello, big boy. He is rather large in terms of body size. It looks like he's got a bit of growing. I'm just looking at his head and how small it is in comparison to the size of the rest of his body. And also in comparison to the size of the elephant bulls that we typically see around here. If you don't know, now you do, but Aldonio is very close to Amboseli and Savo, kind of sandwiched between the two. And this area is known for some of the last greatest tuskers, so elephants with very, very long tusks. Sadly, that gene is not very common anymore. It's almost been wiped out in South Africa, although we are lucky enough in the greater Kruger area, there are some up-and-coming individuals, which is great. So they need to keep sowing their seeds so we can bring back the tuskers of Southern Africa. And then, Mindy, just on the topic of elephants swimming, you've said that it must be so liberating for them to be in the water. You're quite right. As you say here, taking the weight off their feet, you can see it almost instantaneously. Just everything about them changes. I mean, elephants are already really, peaceful animals for the most part, but there's normally quite a bit of excitement around the water. And you really see them come alive when they're able to swim and thrash about. It's just pure joy. It's almost impossible to feel sad. And we've had some spectacular sightings on Djuma at Gowrie Dam and Treehouse and at Hoek Dam too, where the elephants swim a lot. And I think I'm wondering if we're going to get a cold winter this year. I hope we do. The fact that there's already snow, I think the snow that was predicted for this weekend into the early week in the western parts and the eastern parts of the country, in South Africa, not Kenya. So I'm hoping that we might get snow in the surrounding areas. So yeah, warm days, cooler early mornings and evenings. We might still be able to see some of the elephants swimming at Pridelands. They just used to swim all year round. Catherine is also hoping for One Ton, who is, if not the most famous tusker in this area, or to come down and have a drink. We'll keep an eye out for him. I haven't seen him in ages. And then Bill Myrtle Beach, you've said that the water looks quite nice here. It does, especially in comparison to the water at Jamala. And the reason for that is, well, I suppose both of the waterholes, often of course they can be topped up by the rain, but the size of the waterhole here at Aldonio is tiny in comparison. So, less room for the animals to swim and defecate and urinate in. Not to say that they don't, but it doesn't sort of get as, I don't know, what's the word to use? Like putrid, I suppose, is a good word to describe it. And because it's so small and the amount of animals that depend on this waterhole, they drink the water up quite quickly. So you see the levels drop down quite dramatically. Here has also been going through quite bad, some of the worst floods they've ever had. of Kenya, which is devastating, and the amount of who have lost their lives, their homes, livestock also disappearing, and of course the detriment to all the wild animals around. Lots of rivers burst their banks, so it's quite devastating. It is good for an area like this, which Tsavo, Amboseli, Aldonio are typically quite dry areas. So, it's good for them to have a proper top up. So I imagine there's just so much water around. Look how lovely, lush and green it is. And normally as we go into June, everything starts to dry up again. But I don't think that that's going to be the case. Luna, you have to tell me if you went and watched a video of elephants swimming. I would love to know what you thought of it. I think it will just surprise anyone if none of you have seen it. You've got to go do it. You can see there's no rush with this bull. There's no one here to pressure him to drink quicker. Normally the animals, especially the younger bulls, tend to cycle through here quite quickly. Oh, there's my friend LG7. Hello. As I was saying earlier, with Wild Earth, and it's created this, great online family. When I was doing the waterhole shows more often, it was great. Or even just doing the live Wild Earth drives, you get to familiarize yourself with everybody's usernames. So it's all very mysterious to me, but it's just nice to hear them again. Luna, you said you went to watch the videos and you said it was too precious. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad, and I hope one day, Luna, you'll be able to experience that in real life. I've obviously said this 25 million times, but how desperate I am to go to Old Daniel, and I'd love to specifically go to this hide. And I mean, I'll be infatuated by all the elephants and the other animals that come around, but the butterflies that are here, I'm so desperate to try and identify them, but it's almost impossible because they're so small, they fly so quickly. Sometimes they settle, but it's often it's actually not often. It's very difficult to identify butterflies. You need to look at the patterns on the top side of their wings, but then also on the underside, and that's very difficult to do in this manner. There are just so many. And Stephen Boyd, you said this is absolutely beautiful. It is. And you'll see, especially when we're at Old Daniel, the sort of background sounds are just so beautiful. And obviously to hear the slurping up of the water, and then as it drips back down from their trunk is sort of some of my favorites. So I quite often go quiet here. Bird life is also very chatty. It's a nice close-up of the elephant's feet. Now, Spas Langkov, you said it's amazing to see elephants at Odonia, but you wondered why you've never seen them swimming here before. Well, because if an elephant tried to swim in this waterhole, it would be like trying to flop around in a tiny blow-up kiddie's pool. It's just not going to work. It also has a very hard concrete bottom from what I've seen, so I don't think it's going to be particularly nice to kind of roll around in. So when they swim or wallow, they typically need a slightly bigger space than this. You see the warthogs going in though. That's like a Olympic-sized swimming pool for the warthogs. Okay, not really, but you get my picture. Just Kendra, you said it looks so gorgeous out there and you're wondering how hot it is. Well, Jordan did me a solid and she had a quick look at the weather, and she says that it is 21 degrees Celsius. So, in fact, it's actually quite cool. I mean, it's a nice day. I'd definitely be in shorts and a t-shirt. I'm not sure if there's maybe a nip in the air, though. Maybe that's why we're not seeing this elephant splash himself with water. Just coming to have a drink, but it's not hot enough to warrant completely covering himself with that water. And now he's done. Off he goes. He's a beautiful big boy, but he's still got a bit of growing to do. I'm just looking at, like I say, I always love looking at the size of an elephant's head in comparison to the rest of its body. We don't always look at tusk size because that's really just got to do with genetics being passed down. That will determine how big your tusks are going to be. But a lovely boy nonetheless. But we're going to keep an eye out on this camera to see if One Ton or any of our other favorite tuskers come down for a drink. But in the meantime, we're going to head to Namibia and see what's happening at Boyle. Whew, it's a day for elephants. We're done with the boys now, and we're finally meeting up with a breeding herd of elephants. It might be one or two, maybe two breeding herds of elephants here. We'll see, are they all going to move around together, or are they going to do something? But as it progresses into dry season, we do see lots of groups of animals forming herds, sort of super herds, and moving together, almost like mini migrations to areas to find food. A bit of a scuffle, what looked like between, so there'd be a cow on the left, and I can't see it, and the one that it chased also looks like a cow, which is quite interesting. Well, this is a much bigger ward than what we've been looking at. It's quite deep in the middle. And as it dries up, the animals competing for space around resources, and especially water. Elephants can sometimes not be very tolerant of even other elephants, sometimes not even other animals, and they'll tend to chase them away. And this is a great close-up. Now we can see so much more detail. We've got a blacksmith lapwing running around. They're always, well, for the most part, I shouldn't say always, but they're typically around the water's edge. A couple of bird species that are regulars. We've got zebra in the distance and also wildebeest, if you're wondering what those animals are. And I think I can see a handful of oryx too, if I'm not mistaken. The elephants, they don't seem to be playing around too much in the water. Again, maybe the temperature is just not hot enough for them. They're going in, getting their legs wet, having drinks, but there's no thrashing about or playing. I thought even the young ones, which are, will use any excuse to be able to play with their siblings and other members of the herd. But it looks like it's quiet time at the moment. And here you can see what I was talking about with that elephant on the left. For some bizarre reason, animals absolutely love to defecate and urinate in the water. He's doing both at the moment. That's great. The elephants on the left don't seem to be the most relaxed. They're the same individuals that were sort of causing all sorts of havoc. I'm not really sure what happened. If there's maybe a tussle, maybe someone bumped a younger elephant. That was just sort of a reaction to that. And look, there's another elephant also defecating in the water. Jive Bunny, you said that you were watching the camera last night and you just said that there were so many black rhinos around here. That's incredible. I'm so happy to hear that. That's been my dream, is to see a black rhino on this camera. I have actually never been to Namibia before, so it's also right up on my list of places to travel. I so badly want a road trip for about a month through that area, maybe one day. But I'd definitely be stopping over and spending some time here. Ralph, I think out of everybody, has spent the most time in this area. So his knowledge and his experiences and sightings here, is just invaluable. I think, Gillian, you had asked if elephant herds are bigger in some regions than others. Oh, absolutely. And you'll probably find that there's a couple of different reasons that could cause, the herds sizes to vary, but food availability is going to be one of them. The other thing that we were seeing a very long time ago, we don't see it as much, is how animals will migrate with one another. Elephants would form groups, essentially, and travel thousands of kilometers, West Africa all the way to the southern eastern parts of that, sort of towards Mozambique and South Africa and those places. And then you probably would have seen hundreds of thousands of elephants all moving together. Sadly, that doesn't happen anymore. So, having a herd of like 80 elephants, I don't know if that's particularly sustainable. It could be quite difficult. We see elephants socializing with one another, but in southern Africa, for the most part, I'd say seeing anywhere between 15 and 30 elephants is about the size. I noticed when I was in Ruaha National Park, I didn't see massive elephants together, or like 2 or 3 adult cows with their offspring. They were very small groups, and there were some bigger groups too, but not like what we can typically see in South Africa. And then again, sometimes it's always difficult to tell one herd apart from the other if they have just joined up for a little bit, so it can be quite tricky. So when you get to a waterhole like this, it's always really interesting watching the interactions when you have multiple herds of elephants that are not necessarily moving together or come down and drink, and you can kind of see the little segregations between the groups. Some elephants will go up and greet one another. Others will actually maybe be intimidated and actually move off completely and wait and come back to drink. So there's a lot of politics that goes around, I think, with elephants and animals in general, but especially around the waterhole as we go into dry season. You said that these elephants look like they are Brits on holiday in the UK that don't want to get into the water beyond their knees because it's too cold. That's quite funny. I think the zebras that are just coming in from the right-hand side, we'll see if they go in. They're also not afraid. Zebras absolutely love water, just like horses. And when they are able to, they'll spend a lot of time in it. In an area like this, they're so lucky with the lack of crocodiles. And they've obviously learned this over time that there aren't any here. And we even see the springback going in quite deep in case you haven't, or maybe this is your first time watching, which is also unusual. Animals typically have a healthy respect for water and the creatures that live inside them, because you never know what quite could be lurking at the bottom of the murky waters. So it's always good to be careful, even when you're the size of an elephant. That sounded like a young elephant snorting out of its trunk, maybe trying to blow its nose. It's not quite. And of course, there's one elephant all the way on the right, probably disturbing her. Maybe that's why it moved off. And then there's a few little elephants that look like they're rolling around in the water. And then, Tristan, you've asked if my dog Tucker has ever encountered elephants before. He has, at a distance. When he was much younger, he came to visit at Pridelands one day. And this was a very long time ago, though. And for those of you that remember, when Pridelands was still one of the feeds, Ndlovu Dam, which sits right outside the eco-training camp, it's just unbelievable. Gosh, the amount of elephants that came through, especially just after the fences were dropped around Pridelands to open it up to Baluli Game Reserve. Wow. So Tucker sat at one of the logs at a distance, probably 80 meters away, very quietly and watched everything. So Tucker has actually seen every animal, all the big five. He just hasn't seen black rhino, but he's seen white rhinos, he's seen lions, he's seen leopards, buffalo, everything. And he's pretty good. He just barks at wildebeest. He doesn't like them very much. And he's now not a fan of the warthogs, which is perfect, because I prefer him to not think that they're friends. He wants to be friends with everybody. But I don't think encounter elephants in a vehicle, in like an open safari vehicle with Tucker in them. Definitely not predators either. So I would avoid those situations. Yolanda, you just said that you remember Pridelands and Ndlovu Dam and you miss it. It's a special place. All these different locations that we visit, they all have got something that just, sets them apart. I remember when first started doing the safaris there for Wild Earth. I think, when was it? Was it 2020? It must have been. I think it was in July. I never used to leave the dam. I just used to sit there for 3 hours and just watch all the animals come through. It was unbelievable. For a property of that size, it was really productive, and especially that one waterhole. Well, it's interesting. It looks like most of this group of elephants is actually moving off together. Look, there's almost like two lines. Some going towards the tree, the leadwood, and then some others moving just slightly off to the left. But perhaps this is where they separate ways. Or they might go around and rejoin. Except for that one elephant right at the back that's really just got a bee in its bonnet and wanting to chase the zebra away. I mean, come on, give him a chance. Zebras are quite patient, though. They'll just sit and wait. I know they see they're all zigzagging, kind of coming back together. Now, this is quite a big herd. Okay, but we're going to say goodbye to the elephants and we're going to head to Tau, which is also in Madikwe, and check out some water. No, come back. Do this. I love warthogs so much. Well, yes and no. It depends on the circumstance. But for the most part, I love them, especially when they're wallowing in water. And then this is my second favorite thing to see, is when they now decide to have a scratch. We've seen giraffe scratching. Today, this is how warthogs relieve their itches. Obviously, they're not big enough to use a tall tree to rub against. But this old concrete structure that seems to be left behind works quite well. Might actually be like, I don't actually know what would be in there. That can't be too comfortable. That's clearly a young warthog. Is it a boar? Oh, young warthog boar. Very scratchy behind the ears where we typically see it, and also around where those warts are, those protrusions that come out the side of their faces. We all know how nice a back scratch feels, right? Have you ever done that where somebody just comes up behind you and gives you a back scratch and all of a sudden you're itchy, but you weren't itchy before? My favorite feeling in the whole wide world. And the bum wiggle that goes with the technique that they use is just, it's so interesting. Let's see if he's going to do his tummy next. That requires a little bit of maneuvering of the legs. And you can see that this little concrete structure has been used quite often. It's already caked with mud. And then Candace, you said that you love their antenna tails. Except he's not doing a good job of showcasing that though. He's too busy swatting the flies. You can see his mane is all raised up. Kind of like when you get out the shower and you do that quick hair towel dry. And off he goes. Nope. Still a little bit itchy. Okay, bye. LG7, you said the other day there was an elephant that was walking right around a crocodile at this waterhole. And you said you were quite shocked as to how close it is. Was the LG7, was the crocodile out on land or was it in the water and the elephant was moving past it? Normally they give each other a wide berth, but if it was out on land, you know, for the most part, and again, you can never say with absolute confidence because animals just like to do whatever they want when they want, and they're less likely to attack, say, an elephant on land. And I'm sure the elephant can see them and they're just sitting there and they're not necessarily posing a threat, so the elephants will just move quite closely around them. I've seen that happening quite a bit in Kenya along the Mara River, where elephants don't particularly enjoy crocodiles, and where I suppose crocodiles don't enjoy elephants is when they're in their space, when they're in the water where they feel most comfortable. just having a quick scan around to see what else is up, if there might be anything coming down to drink. Otherwise, it's gone a bit quiet. I hope it doesn't last for too long. Aha! We're at Juma now, by the looks of it, with another warthog that's having a drink of water, and he has already had a wallow. Look at the blacksmith lapwings, the birds just to the left of it. We're definitely making use of the warthog being around. You can imagine how many insects are flying about. And then some of them might land next to it on the muddy water. And grab them. So it's quite nice to see. This young warthog boar is also on a mission. But again, they're not going to spend too much time down at the water. They're going to do their thing. They're quite vulnerable. And they'll move back into a more comfort. But I don't know if there's such a thing as a comfortable spot for a warthog. Just because their senses aren't spectacular, their sense of smell is wonderful. The hearing's not too shabby, but their eyesight, it's the animal that I think most guides learn how to sneak up on. Oh, never mind. There's a whole bunch more warthogs. That's quite nice, a little family. You can see a female with her youngsters from last year. Just the three of them. And he might be trailing along and following the females to see if she's going to tolerate him, because it's been ratting season. So coming out of ratting season now, but where the males become quite frisky and mate with the females. It's nice to see that there's a bit of green grass around the dam, though. That's what the warthogs are going to be after. But these ones that doesn't look like they've had too much of a wallow. There is a mud line going across from their legs, across their underside of their belly, but they haven't had a proper wallow. Let's see if they head back down there. There we go. Now I wonder if that's a young male that he's chasing. You can clearly see the size difference. So this is what the boars like to do, to try and get the female's attention that the young ones are around. So we'll chase them. I actually have a story. It's not the story, but for those of you that know me, I drive tortoise. I'm so slow unless I'm chasing bugs or something along those lines. So for the most part, I drive really slowly. And I live on a wild where there is an overpopulation of dogs. You all know the stories of the warthogs trying to get into the house when I leave the front door open, and there's all sorts of exciting things. Or the babies coming through the fence and herding them back out again, quite entertaining. And a couple of weeks ago, it was just starting of the ratting season, so the really big boars were out and about, like much bigger than this individual we've just seen. And the speed limit in the estate that I live in is 40 kilometers an hour. Pretty slow. I think I was maybe doing about 30 kilometers an hour. The next minute, this enormous warthog boar chasing a young male, like what we just saw over there, ran out into the road. Thankfully, I slammed on brakes and almost came to a complete stop. Do you think the warthog slowed down? Nope. And they ran to the side of my car. Both warthogs were fine. I watched them both get up. I didn't obviously drive over them. They just hit the side of my vehicle, which I'm very upset about because it's a pretty new car. But anyways, And unfortunately, the damage is not too bad, but like I have to replace the whole bumper because we know what that's like. You can't just replace a little part of it. But I kid you not, that warthog boar, he must have had a bit of a headache, and he just like shook his head, and then he didn't even think about it, and he started chasing that young boar away. Anyways, I was just really glad that they didn't seem to be hurt. Um, yeah, but that's what happens. I've seen it with the impala rams during rutting season, chasing one another, and they just don't necessarily think, and it doesn't matter how slow you're going, because they just run into you. It's not nice. Really unpleasant. That's the first time anything like that has ever happened to me, but I just thought I'd share that with you. I was devastated. Completely devastated. I was like, oh my goodness. I feel horrible. But they're pretty tough. They're actually not pretty. They're very tough animals. Have a little scan around, see if there's anything else. It doesn't look like it for now. And Sanjeev Roy, you said that you feel really bad when lions take out warthogs from the burrows. Yeah, it's quite a thing. But you know the amount of the persistence that the lions show, constantly trying to dig, 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 and dig. It's not a job pulling a warthog out of the burrow. So there's also a lot of skill and fun. Lions who have practiced it and mastered it. It's I am particularly bloodthirsty, so I don't get a rush off of animals tearing each other apart. But it's also nature; they need to eat. They have to do it as might not seem to us like it's very effective, or it might be cruel. But I have to be very careful, in my opinion, on using those words because they don't look at it like that. That's just how they are, right? Well, I think what humans do to other humans and animals, that's really cool, but our cognitive ability is a lot more advanced. But anyways, yeah, so it's very, very sad to hear that. And like I said, warthogs are so tough, they often take a bit of time before they take their last breaths. Anyways, I didn't want to really stick around. Okay, we're going to go back to Oldonyo. There's another elephant making its way down to the water. Is this not the same elephant scene? I kind of want to say that it is. Who else agrees with me? To be honest, I didn't notice any major identifying features other than a few notches off the side of its ears. And we had really small tusks like this individual, but let me know if you agree or not. Well, wasn't that quite an interesting interaction? I'm almost certain that the elephant on the left is the same one that we first saw having a drink. I don't know what would have moved him off. Or maybe he just thought to himself, and I think we've all been in this position, I'll just have one more, and made his way back to have a final drink. But almost immediately, as that the bull on the right hand side, who you can see is he looks older. His tusks are obviously much larger too. But as he emerged from the tree line, there must have been some communication going on, unless the elephant on the left could smell him. I'm not sure which way the wind is blowing. And he kind of stepped away. And you see how he's not drinking. This is all a sign of respect. He's moved over and he said, right, you can have the water hole. You're bigger than I am. And like I said, elephant politics is really interesting. And half the time we have no idea what's going on because we obviously can't understand them. But we can look at their body language. That definitely helps. And if they vocalize, that helps even more. Now he's having a bit of a dust bath. Kind of just patiently waiting his turn. I think he's going to suss it out and see, will this bull allow me to have a drink if I drink on the other side, or is he going to be quite dominant around this area? But now it's amazing. Look at the size difference. Look at how much taller the one on the right is. Oh, he's a big boy. And you can just even see the trunk size. It's almost double the thickness of the one on the left. You can also hear some voices. That's because there's a hide here. There'll be people that are just enjoying. I always love hearing the voices of other people. Nice to know that the hides are being used and the animals are being appreciated. Just see how they'll stop and listen every now and then. Although the elephants that come here are quite accustomed to hearing the voices. I'm so nosy. I'm just trying to listen to hear what the people are. No, I'm only teasing. A bit too soft to hear that. Okay, bull on the left is feeling now at the water's edge that his friend that has joined him, he might not be a friend, maybe just a colleague, an acquaintance, is not going to chase him out of the water. It could still change though. Now, so Ellie, you've asked if that's a growth that we can see on the elephant bull on the right-hand side, his left side. So if you're looking at it, it'll be on the right. Maybe it also seems like he's got quite a bit of loose skin by the looks of it. You know, it's not uncommon to see elephants with little abscesses or hematomas. We see it quite often. Of course, sometimes if it leads to an infection, that can be threatening. But for the most part, their immune systems are a lot tougher than ours, and they're able to combat issues like this. I'm also just, he didn't like that bird. He doesn't look like the oldest elephant either. Now I'm looking at the depressions around his temples. They're obviously a little bit more sunken in than we see with the bull on the left-hand side, but not too dramatic. It's always really difficult to try and gauge the age of elephants when they are mature individuals. Brown eyes girl. I see you've just said, is this live? Yes, it's happening right now. So we're currently, well, I'm sitting in Hoedspruit in South Africa, the safari capital of the country. However, I am chatting about elephants that are currently drinking water, as you can see, in an area called Oldonyo, which is in Kenya. You can ask me questions if you like, and let me know if this is your first time watching. If it is, welcome to the community. You'll definitely get a warm welcome from everybody, that's for sure. And you can ask me any questions you like, especially if it's about wildlife. Well, I think with all the bugs and stuff flying around, a bit of a splash around the eyes, a good way to try and alleviate that, well, rarely. I'm sure the bugs will go straight back there. And Granny Mango, you're asking about when an elephant bull is in must, does all the dribbling of urine cause infections? Now, for those of you who are watching for the first time or maybe haven't heard must, for those of you that have heard what the term must means, you're going to hear it again for the third time. But it's a very important term for people to understand because there's a lot of misconception around it. So must is a state that an elephant goes in, a healthy elephant bull that is sexually mature. This can be suppressed by much older bulls, so they will literally bully. I don't want to anthropomorphize, but they'll literally push and shove younger bulls, and this will suppress the overstimulation of testosterone. Essentially, think of it like just a moment in time where they're just feeling so healthy, so pumped with life. They all of a sudden have this surge in testosterone, which drives them out of the space where they feel most comfortable, their home range, and force them to move into other areas in search of female elephants that are in estrus. This does not mean elephant bulls cannot with females within must. There's a lot of misconception around that they can mate at any time. However, by having that surge of testosterone where it's at much higher levels than where it normally is, like I said, it just encourages them to move away. Because if there's no females in that area, then they might, especially the older bulls, they're like, well, we don't really care. We're not going to go look for the girls. But they get this drive that encourages them to kind of move off, which is very important to do. And female elephants prefer bulls when it comes to mating, those that are in must at the time. So with about the infection, no, there isn't. Perhaps if there was a cut on the sheath of the penis or something along those lines, then yes, absolutely. But for the most part, no. So that would be my only guess, is if something could then happen, as if there was a wound of some kind around the sheath of the penis or on the penis itself, then I think you could probably see something like that. Well, and just of course the elephants move off. I'm sure there'll be more that come on down. We're going to go back to Tau now and check out what's happening that side. Well, there's a wonderful sight, another breeding herd elephants. This is the first one of the day at Tau Game Lodge and Madikwe Game Reserve with a wildebeest in the background. And then who have we got there? Have we got teals? Yeah, it looks like it. Looks like there are a couple of teals just swimming to the left of the elephants. All three of them. And just getting their sweat and then moving off. I'm sure it must be quite warm in Madikwe. I actually don't know what the temperature is there. To be fair, I don't even know what the temperature is in Hoedspruit. Let me have a look. I'm gonna guess. I think it's like 26 or no, it's 30 outside. It doesn't feel that warm, but maybe it's because I'm just so the heat now. It's crazy that we're just about to go. Oh, not go into June. We are in June, and that we're still having wonderful warm temperatures like this. It makes me a bit nervous though. Kit Kat, you've asked, how do the temporal depressions occur? Is it loss of fatty tissue or something? I suppose the other thing that happens, if you just think of how we as humans age, how much our skin tends to stretch and sag as much as we despise it. The same thing happens with elephants. So you'll tend to see a lot more like loose belly skin. You'll see that their spine sticks out a lot more. And then just, they look kind of, they get that sort of gaunt look. So I imagine that kind of what happens, and it just exaggerates the deepness in their depression. If we see a really old elephant, I'm just looking now in and amongst the herd, then you'll be able to see it really nicely. But I can't see an individual here that's old. There's a story that I tell all the time of this one elephant cow that I used to see close to the border of the Serengeti in Tanzania, but in Kenya in the Mara Triangle. And this cow is probably the oldest elephant I've ever seen. I have no idea of her age. She's in fact all by herself. Her herd has moved off, and she's sort of just lingering around what we call luggers, or these little drainage systems, where the vegetation is nice and lush, and in the swampy areas, because obviously her teeth are worn down and she's not really able to eat like she would normally. And she looked, gosh, I can't even describe how her skin was sagging, and just, I've never seen such deep depressions around their temples. It was really unbelievable. I have it somewhere, I need to find it. She also had enormous tusks. And something that we really don't see in South Africa is elephant cows with particularly large tusks. And one elephant on the right, young one's got his trunk stretched up. I don't even think he's smelling anything. I think he's just kind of playing the fool. And so many different birds. With the teals, we've got the black-winged stilts. Of course, there's always the common moorhens and the red-knobbed coots. It looks like shell ducks in the distance, where the wildebeest are coming down to drink. Just on the right, I can just see one brown bird with a very white head. I think they're shell ducks, or they're Egyptian geese. I might be making up all sorts of stories now. After one wildebeest has made its way down, plenty more are following. I always enjoy the birding around here. I'm also keeping an eye out for any sneaky crocodiles. Here's a nice view of a common moorhen and the black-winged stilts. Look how long those legs are. Joy, you've asked, do the birds feed on the dung from the elephants? So not necessarily going after the partially digested vegetation in the dung, but because the dung holds moisture for such a long period of time, you'll be, I wouldn't say pleasantly surprised, because no one really loves bugs as much as I do. Okay, of course there's people out there that love bugs as much as I do, but the life that is in dung is incredible, especially elephant dung. So birds will often peck it open or kick it open. Think of like how a chicken might sort of scurry through the leaf litter, or if you're a hornbill, got a nice long beak, you can just rip it open that way. And then they'll eat the insects that are in there. And then, of course, because they don't have the greatest digestive system, sometimes there's even partially digested fruit. You can even see squirrels opening up elephant dung to get the partially digested marulas or any other seeds and things that might be in there. So even though we look at dung as what it is, it provides so much more, right, than it just being waste matter. That's what I love about nature. It's just there's nothing random and nothing really goes to waste. What's that saying? One man's junk is another man's treasure. I suppose that's the case for elephant dung. And I was correct, those are shell ducks, like you can see on the right. It's nice to see them. Oh, and yellow-billed ducks too. Great. You can just see them on the bottom right-hand corner just popping their heads out. The bird life is fantastic. It's only going to get better and better as we go into the drier periods and all the water holes that are not pumped dry out. There's going to be a whole lease of life. White bird, which I clearly missed, is an African spoonbill. One of the most interesting birds. They look like they defy the laws of nature. Like, how do you eat with 2 spoons? And then I say this, but we eat with chopsticks, right? So they make it work. Well, the herd is kind of spread out a bit. Some look like they're just having a bit of a siesta, kind of standing motionless. Some investigating around the ground, maybe picking up on different scents. I'm sure there'll be a few that are going to have maybe a dust bath. It's very quiet, very peaceful around the waterhole today. No crocs. That's kind of what I'm intensely looking for at the moment. Looks like the elephants have been feeding on this tree. There's so many broken branches. This is where the weavers typically make their nests. You can see there's still remnants of a few of them from, I suppose, the end of last year and the beginning of this year. I'm also not sure which acacia species it is, but there's another tree growing around it, and I wonder if it's a woolly caper bush. You can see the change in leaves. They're kind of quite a script tree that almost climbs up onto other trees. It's always difficult to identify them when you're sitting on the other side of on a screen, really. You can't really see all the identifying features. Also, the wind is picking up slowly. Actually, let's see, what is the weather going to be like? Let's check. They're only at about 26 today. Ooh. And then they say tomorrow at Madikwe will be interesting, because I'm also hosting live at the waterhole tomorrow. That they are saying potentially a small amount of rain, but the wind picks up quite a bit. And I'm wondering, just zooming out to have a look, there's also a big weather system off the east coast of South Africa, so maybe that's going to bring some interesting weather all the way around. Yeah. Oh, Monday they're saying over 20 mils of rain predicted in and around Hoedspruit, so we'll see how that goes. I'll believe it when I see it, but that would be fabulous. You've asked, when elephants break down trees, do they cause habitat loss for some species? Absolutely. They create habitat loss, but they also create new habitats for animals too. So one thing I always like people to just remember about elephants is that they aren't naturally destructive animals. Again, that's a and we're anthropomorphizing. Elephants don't go out to be destructive. They just do what they need to do to survive. And when we take away the space for them to grow their resources, and they have to keep revisiting the same resources, where if they were able to move freely, they might not come back to those areas for months or even years and allow the vegetation to naturally grow. Of course, elephants are very important for turning very, densely vegetated areas into open grasslands. Every animal kind of has its place. So yes, unfortunately, and especially on reserves that are closed ecosystems, so they have a fence around them, that becomes increasingly difficult because you're really limiting where those elephants can go. So they do target big trees. So a study that I've spoken about so many times, but I'm so passionate about it, is you may remember almost Dr. Robin Cook. I think he might be there now. I think he might be almost finished his PhD. He is from Elephants Alive, and he actually visited, and I hosted him on one of the live, it was a sunset safari drive, which was great. He spoke about quite a few of his projects, and one of them was using African honeybees to protect the big trees that elephants tend to target by stripping their bark or pushing them over to alleviate the exact problems that we're talking about. And it was a huge success. But the other issue that then Robin brought to our attention was that these trees that the elephants are pushing down are also some of the favorite spots for whiteback vultures, their preferred trees that they like to nest in. So now he's trying to figure out, how do I combine the two studies and figure something out. So there's a lot of work that's being done to try and figure out how to save some of these big trees, but it is inevitable. And honestly, the only way to save them is by giving the animals more space and creating safe wildlife corridors for them to naturally migrate all year round. You can see this elephant cow, she's kind of just moved away from the rest of the herd, just enjoying a bit of a mud spa, just taking it easy. I think all the parents out there in the world know how important it is to have some me time, and sadly I don't think that you get enough of it. So she's definitely going to make the most of this. And then Darren, just to wrap up there, when I said that they also create new ecosystems, what they tend to do is think of a tree. Let's use a big marula tree. Elephant has come through, it's stripped the bark and it's ring bark the entire tree. So now there's no nutrients moving from the roots up into the leaves. The cambium layer is gone. That tree starts to be hollowed out by things like termites or boring beetles or any little waterholes, as we call them, any little arthropods. So that creates life with that outer bark being there. It often gives the tree a great protection from those insects. They normally wouldn't be able to penetrate the inner bark. And then if that tree is broken and falls down to the ground, there's a new, ecosystem or microhabitat for lizards and snakes and scorpions and everything else to kind of live around it, even squirrels, you name it. So it just really depends on how you look at everything. So yes, we can call elephants destructive, but we can also call them engineers. So now we're back at Oldonyo, where the elephants have taken a break, but now the giraffe are right on time. And here's a really good example of how using the ossicones can sometimes not be very accurate. So earlier we had a question on how do you sex giraffe, and I said, well, there's two main obvious ways, but there are a couple of others. So if we look at this giraffe on the right-hand side, remember I said individuals that have got fairly big ossicones, so that's what that bony protrusion is called, and has very, very fluffy tufts of hair on the top, those would typically be females. But in this case, you can see that this is a slightly younger individual, and you can see there's lots and lots of hair there. If you go down to its underbelly, and that there is a big bump. Like I said, not the belly button, but the sheath of the penis. So as older, that hair will tend to start to disappear. But then I've also seen individuals that, if they were just feeding at a distance, that it might be a bit difficult to tell the two. So it's always good to just kind of double check, go through more than one sort of checklist to be able to get a good confirmation. So here we go. This is a bigger bull that's just coming through. But again, these are not big dominant individuals. You can also start to see those big bony protrude faces too, in comparison to the slightly younger one on the left. But these are all males. Oh, Stalin69, you said, are any of the water holes we see okay for humans to drink from? Oh, goodness. I would personally not drink from any of these water holes just because of the amount of urine and feces that has contaminated the water. Never mind that the fact that the water, sits for a long period of time. There's going to be algae and different types of bacteria that are occurring there too. And we all know what happens if we as humans drink water that is not pretty clean, especially if you don't have a tough stomach. Even if you're not used to drinking borehole water, which is typically quite clean, it comes from underground. That tends to have a lot more lime in it. People can be quite sensitive to that and end up with all kinds of complications. But drinking water from, like, let's say Tao, where we just were watching the elephants. not a good idea. You would be very, very, very sick. So I would rather look for a dry riverbed or a natural spring or an area where there is water that is moving. And if it's moving over rocks, even better. And again, I would still try and make a fire and boil it before drinking it. You have to be so careful. Just looking to see, oh, there's lots of birds coming down, but none of them want to settle, so there's kind of no point looking at them just yet. So all these giraffe bulls, very similar to what we see with elephants. You know, again, there's water, right? So lots of animals will interact together around a waterhole. But as studies have suggested, and I know most of you have heard this too, we are moving away from the old term of giraffes being categorized as having temporary associations for their social structure. Females, studies have now proven that they have more of a matriarchal system, where the oldest females will pass down information to their daughters and other relatives within the herd. And the males are also particularly social, like again what we see with elephants. Younger bulls that have moved away from the breeding herds, they find other individuals of a similar age or similar social status, should I say. They stay together, they're companions, but of course they're free to go. And the older you get, the less likely you want to socialize. I feel like that's sometimes quite common with people too. Um, and they'll spend a bit more time on their own. But it's not to say that you won't see them in large groups. I mean, this was quite a big bachelor group of giraffe, and in fact, they're probably even more. And then Moonbeam Smith, you said, so the water filters you can buy at outdoor stores aren't good enough? No. Honestly, if you're going to take water straight from these water holes, I'd put it through a filter and then I'd boil it as many times. I don't know. I probably clear of this kind of water. Like I said, you can dig it out in a riverbed somewhere. The water will typically be a lot cleaner. And you can find a natural spring or some or water that is stagnant. That's a much better decision. But please always boil it before. And you see people putting water socks to try and filter out some of the sediment, but that's not going to stop any bacteria or anything like that that you could potentially drink. What do we have there? That's the only thing, as I'm sure you know, and I've said this a few times, it was really difficult to identify birds because are they cutthroat finches? Do they have a do they have a stripe under their throats? Looks like it. Yeah, they are cutthroat finches. Sorry, so, and also sometimes it's a bit pixelated, so I can't always see detail, but those are in fact cutthroat finches, which is awesome to see. Really beautiful birds, not ones that we get to come across all the time. Quite small, dainty birds too, and off they go. I'm surprised that they stayed that long at the water's edge. I can see all sorts of things. I can see dragonflies and all sorts of other insects flying about. As we mentioned before, lots of butterflies too. And then Jive Bunny, you said that you're actually boiling water in the UK in certain areas too. Gosh, that's not great. I think probably most of the world is going in that direction. Looks like there's a little weaver of some kind too. just having a drink in the foreground with the cutthroat finches surrounding it. It's much larger than those birds. I'm not sure which weaver that's going to be. Oh, there's a couple of different bird species here. You can see the wattled starling kind of in the center, the biggest bird that's bouncing around there. And that looks like a male in his breeding plumage. And then on the top left, where I feel like this bird never leaves, there's a straw-tailed wider, a really special one. And there's a bunch of other things that I'm not quite sure of what they are. There's definitely a weaver species of some kind. I have to download, and I think for those of you who do not want to pay for a bird app, and I completely understand this, especially one for East Africa, all you got to do is go and look for Merlin birds, and it's by the Cornell Lab, so it's a really good one. They've also used something called eBirds. I just tend to prefer Merlin. If I can find it, there it is. Oh, I have got it. Do I have it installed? I must. And then you just got to download a bird pack. Explore. Sometimes it's a bit complicated. It looks like they've done an update. Okay, I think I might have to download and uninstall that again at some point. But anyways, but really nice. Looks like there's a ringneck dove also sitting right up at the top. I can't remember what the bag effect weaver looks like. Maybe it's one of those. Really lovely. Really, really amazing to sit and watch all these creatures. Catching the afternoons. It gets quite dark. Wait, no, I say it gets quite dark quickly in Kenya. That's not true. That's so close to the equator. The sunset and sunrise times don't really change too much. But it's a little bit nippy with only being 21 degrees Celsius. So I think they're definitely enjoying the sun a little bit earlier than they normally would. And then Lola, you've said thank you so much. It's only a pleasure. And Shiv, you've said thanks for relaxing live at the waterhole. I am very excited, of course, to be hosting the show tomorrow, which is great. So we can catch up on all sorts of things and see what else is kind of happening with all the wildlife. But I hope that you all enjoyed it. And please come action-packed and ready with lots of questions. Tell your family and friends. The more, the merrier. Maybe someone doesn't even know that they need the show in their lives. It can be life-changing. I'm still laughing at the wider on the left-hand side. I feel like it should be making some kind of sound. Maybe it is, but it's just too soft. But you know how it goes. Anyways, okay. I'll see you all tomorrow, same time, same place. And fingers crossed, maybe it'll be a cat-a-day.
Did you miss out on what's been happening in the last 24 hours? Don't worry, because Trish is with you for On Safari. Ha 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 ha.